Hey there, YouTube. This is a quick video about Raid Shadow Legends. So, just wanted to make a video talking about the different levels of RNG that are included in Raid's gearing system. I thought this was kind of interesting just because it's kind of a thing I've kind of thought about as I've played through the game a little bit, but I never really took the time to break it down and how many different sources of RNG there are involved in getting good pieces of gear. So I figured I'd just make a quick video to talk about it. So the short answer to this, and I have a spreadsheet I'll switch over to in a minute here, is that from my count, it looks like there's like somewhere between like 14 and 19 different sources of RNG that are required to get gear pieces. So in other words, it's not just a single bit of RNG. So it's not like you roll a dice and if you get above 60, you have a good piece, and if you get below 60, you have a bad piece. It's not something like that. It's like there's like 14 or 19 different dice rolls, and each of those dice rolls has to give you a good result in order for you to have like an optimal piece of gear. So what are those sources of RNGs? So I've kind of outlined them on the spreadsheet over here. Switch over to it here. So there's basically, I'll kind of look at these in a little bit more detail in a second here, but there's the rank, in other words, the number of stars of the gear piece. There's the rarity of it. If you're looking at the middle row gear pieces, so your gloves, your boots, and your chest piece, there's the main stat that can roll. Same for accessories. There's 4 substats associated with each gear piece. Then once you have your substats, you have to roll on them. So you can roll up to 4 times there. There's the ascension level, or sorry, not the ascension level, but the stat that you send the gear to. There's the set that the piece of gear belongs to, and then the final thing is, for all the primary stats and the substats that you have, do those match up well with the gear set? So, let me move this over to the side here and switch back to the raid screen. So, just to kind of talk through these in a little bit more detail. So, first thing, the rank. That's the number of stars on the gear piece. So, 6 star is the best as of today. Looks like about July the 9th, 2023. So 6 stars is going to be the best. So that's the first thing, is how many stars is the piece. Second part is rarity. So the highest rarity you can get is a mythical rarity, though those are difficult to get. So it's common, uncommon, rare, epic, legendary, and mythical. So the higher up that ladder you can go, the better your gear piece is going to be. Next one is the main stat. So again, for all of these items here, you can have this main stat can be one of many different options. If you're on your top row, then these are always going to be the same main stat. So weapon's always going to be attack, helmet's always going to be HP, shield's always going to be defense. And then for accessories, those can have varying main stats as well. Here, some more RNG there. So anyway, so that's some of the basic stuff, just rank, rarity, the main stat. Now for the substats, so again, each piece of gear is going to have 4 substats, and so that's an open thing. So let's say, for example, you have a defense champion who needs accuracy to land some debuffs, and they need to be tanky, right? So if you had something like that, then the stats you would be looking for would be like defense percent, HP percent, accuracy, maybe some speed to lay their buffs and debuffs down quickly. So that's 4 stats you would have to get there. You'd have to get each of those in order to have like an ideal piece of gear. Alright, so now there's some nuances to this, like so for example, like certain pieces of gear don't have certain primary stats and substats. So for example, like chest pieces here, you can't have a speed primary stat or a crit rate or a crit damage primary stat on a chest piece. And so there's some nuance to it where for some types of gear, some stats and substats don't apply, but there's still RNG within there. So yeah, so that's main stats and substats. And then, of course, once you have your substats, the next thing is how do those things roll? And this is a terrible piece of gear for a tutor. I'm going to change it out later, but basically, all right, I have a defense percent piece here, but then I have all these substats. So these I had 2 rolls here into speed and HP. Now, are those good rolls or bad rolls? That's an open question. Ugh, that's going to change from one piece to the next. So again, more RNG. Yeah, ideally, for an ideal piece of gear, you want all of your rolls to land exactly where you want them, and that's going to be up to chance. So, anyways, so that's the rolls. There's the ascension part of it. So whenever you go to upgrade a piece, you have an ascension bonus here, and that ascension bonus can be any of these stats here for chest pieces at least, and there'll be different stats for other pieces of gear. To get an ideal piece of gear, you have to roll the correct ascension bonus here, and then, right, so you have to get that, so that's another source of RNG. And then next there's the gear set. So, for example, here's some perception gear, but if we collapse all these, then here's the number of sets available in the game. There's probably a few more that I don't have in here, but for any given piece of content that you're farming, so for example, if you're going into farming dragon, then dragon drops accuracy, speed, lifesteal, destroy, toxic, frost, daze, avenging, and stalwart. So depending on what you're doing, you might say, okay, well maybe this gear is not very useful for me, maybe I don't want avenging gear, but I think speed gear is very useful, or destroy gear is very useful for what I'm doing, etc. So, so for whatever you're farming at this point in time, some types of gear sets are going to be useful, and sometimes some sets are not going to be useful. But you don't have any control over which kind of gear set you're going to get when you're farming, other than, for example, if I want speed gear, then I need to go to dragon, but on any given battle against a dragon, it's a 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like a 1 out of 9 chance that I'm going to get speed gear dropped. Now that's assuming the odds are identical for every set. So that's a 1 out of 9 chance. They could be weighted differently than that. I'm not sure, but still, the same idea should apply. If the weights are a little bit different, is that you can't really. It's not easy to farm gear for a certain gear set, other than just doing a ton of runs of a given dungeon, and kind of go from there. So, anyway, so that's gear set, and then the last piece here is, do all of the stats and substats on this piece of gear, do they line up with the gear set that you got, right? So, for example, on these boots, I need to replace these. They have some bad rolls, but I don't know. I need to upgrade my gear overall. But on these boots, these are accuracy boots, and so these are going to be. So this set is going to be useful for any type of champion which needs accuracy. So that could be a nuker that has some nice debuffs on them. It could be like a support champion that needs to lay down some debuffs, something like that. So kind of the last thing here is, do all the stats and the substats here, do they make sense for somebody who needs accuracy? Or maybe a better example of this would be like the offense set. So the offense set, this increases your attack by 15%. So this is going to be useful for attack-based champions, or maybe bomb champions whose damage scales based off of attack. And so, depending on what type of champion that is, it's probably not going to be super useful for me to have a ton of defense percent or things like that on here. Or maybe even a better example would be the defense set. So, right, this might be good if I have a defense-based nuker, but if I have flat attack or attack percent rolls in here, that's not really going to be useful for a defense-based nuker. Now this could still be used by maybe like a support champion, or something like that, but you know, you get the idea. So going back over to the spreadsheet, when you kind of add all those up, let me get that pulled up there. So just thinking about a single piece of gear. All right, so you have the rank, that's one source of RNG. You have the rarity, that's another source of RNG. You have the main stat that you roll, that's another source. Yeah, this could be one out of maybe 9 or 10 possible stats, something like that. You have 4 different substats, so that's 4 sources of RNG. Basically 4 different dice rolls to figure out whether you're going to get a good substat or not. You have the rolls on the substats, so how do those, whenever you roll the substats, do they land in a good way? So that's 4 more dice rolls, 4 more sources of RNG. There's the stat that you ascend to, that's another source of RNG. There's the set that the gear belongs to, so that's another source of RNG. And then finally, you have all 5 of the the stats on the gear. So do the 5 stats that you have, do they match with the gear set? As I was mentioning earlier. So maybe you could consider this one piece of RNG, or maybe you could consider it 5 pieces of RNG. 5 dice rolls for does each substat and main stat, so all 5 of those, do those match the gear set? You could consider that maybe like 5 different dice rolls. Or I don't know, maybe not to go overboard with it, you could just say, do they all match up, and consider that one source of RNG, however you want to look at it. I don't know. You add those up, so you have 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I made a mistake here. It should be 14 to 19. Alright, so something interesting to think about is that if you want to get like ideal pieces of gear in Raid Shadow Legends, you're throwing at least like 14 to 19 different dice for every piece of gear that you get. And your hope is that for each of those 14 to 19 dice rolls, that they all come back with a good result. And this is ignoring like the percentages too on the dice that you're rolling. So maybe for, if you're looking at rank, maybe for the level of dungeon you're farming, maybe 5-star is a 50% chance, and 6-star is a 20% chance, or it could be anything like that. So each of these different categories, there's going to be a different weight to getting like the best stat to get an ideal piece of gear out of it. So anyways, I think that's about it. I've kind of rambled on enough here, but I thought it was kind of interesting. It's just the huge number of ways that there are to, or the huge number of different sources of RNG there are, and if you're trying to get like ideal pieces of gear in Raid, it's like you have to roll 14 or 19 different dice, and maybe on each dice, maybe you have like a 10% or a 20% chance of succeeding with that dice. But then you have, maybe dice 1, I have a 10% chance of succeeding. Dice 2, I have a 15% chance of succeeding. Dice 2, I have a 20, and then the next one I have a 10 and a 10. And so it's like, in order for you to get an ideal piece of gear, all of these dice, all 14 to 19 of them, they have to roll, they have to roll the way that you want them to get an ideal piece of gear. So anyways, that's all for now. Something interesting to think about, I think. See ya.